Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another 4 p.m. Bible study. My name is Jim Schaefer, and I'm a retired pastor and Bible teacher. And I share with you every week a story, a lesson from God's Word. Today, we're starting a brand new series entitled Limmud, and it is about key Hebrew terms or key Hebrew words. Now, we're not going to teach you Hebrew because I don't know Hebrew. What I want to do, though, is introduce you to some key Hebrew terms and allow us to take a look at them and see how they influence our understanding of the Bible. So, in this introductory lesson today, we're going to do something, I don't guess it's a little unusual. We're going to do a little quiz. And in that quiz, I think it's going to reveal what we do know and what we don't know about biblical languages. And maybe it will help us to at least begin to address some of those questions. The basic premise that I have is that by understanding some key Hebrew words, it will enrich your Bible study and it will enrich your understanding of God's Word and make a significant difference in your life. Now, in this first series that we're going to do, we're going to look at just 10 words. If you like the series and it's something you want to continue, then certainly we can add to that. But I wanted to start it out small and see what kind of an interest there might be. So let's start with our basic questions. Question number one. Take my glasses off so I can see the screen here. Question number one is really very simple. Question number one asks, what languages were the Bible written in? What languages were the Bible written in? So what I'd like you to do is to take a few moments to jot down your answer. Just do the best you can. If you don't know, that's perfectly fine. I don't expect everyone to know all of these answers. In fact, my guess is that there are going to be a number of questions that you just don't have an answer to. So let me take a look here on my phone. Let me find my Facebook page and see what kind of response we're getting to our live question today. I see quite a number of people here already. Jackie Snyder, it is good to see you. Jeff Pugh, Charlene Atkins, Andrew Peterman, Michelle Woods. Thank you guys. I'm glad that you're here. And I know others will be joining us as we go. In fact, I can see the playlist is growing. So the first question that I want to ask you today is, what three languages were the Bible written in? Go ahead and make your guess. I'd love to see what kind of response you might have. What three languages are the Bible or is the Bible written in? Take a few moments and make a couple of responses or replies here. We'll give you just a few minutes to do so, and then I'll share the answer with you. By the way, while I've got a minute, let me simply say that my knee is doing a bit better. I had physical therapy yesterday, and when I went in, I told the man, I said, this just is not going well. I'm in pain. I don't feel a whole lot better today than I did when I first had the knee surgery. In fact, in some ways, it's worse. I feel like it's sprained. Go easy on me. And so he did what most physical therapists do. He doubled and tripled the amount of work that I had to do. And we're about 3/4 of the way through the physical therapy when he looked at me and said, "So how are you feeling now?" And I looked at him and I said, "Surprisingly, I'm feeling better." And he said, "That's exactly right. The more movement that you have, the better you're going to feel." It was a way of reminding me of the adage they told me at the beginning of this: motion is lotion. And the more you move, the better you're going to feel. So I feel like that yesterday was a bit of a turning point for me. I'm working the leg more. I'm feeling better. I think that's a good thing. I'm moving. In fact, I'm right at 4 weeks today. I appreciate your interest and your response. Well, I'm not getting any updates here. That doesn't mean that you aren't. It just means that my piece here isn't doing what I want it to do. I'll take one more look. Am I going to have to refresh this every time? I do see quite a number. Here we go. Very good. I see Jeff has said Hebrew, Greek, Aramaic. Charlene was Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek. Andrew put in Ethiopian, which is not really a bad answer, Andrew. Jackie said Hebrew, Aramaic, or Arabic, and Latin. And Sue said, "Hi, Jim, I need a break." Okay. There's a number of others watching, Jackie Snyder, Debbie McClure, and quite a few others. Thanks, guys. Go ahead and participate. The correct answer here is what Jeff gave us: Hebrew, Greek, and Aramaic. Those are the three languages of the Bible. Question number 2. Are you ready? Question number 2 is, what language was the New Testament primarily written in? So here we go. This is the New Testament. We're looking for the language that it was primarily written in. So go ahead and start giving me a few answers there. And we'll take a look and see exactly what your answers might be. Let's see if this continues on. I see a couple of responses Charlene has given me. Oh, I'm told that the Sue Cozart wasn't Sue Cozart, it was Gary. He's taking a break. He's doing wallpaper, I believe. I'm glad I could provide you with a break, Gary. All right. Jeff has given an answer. Jackie's given an answer. And so far, everybody's got the answer correct. The correct answer is Greek. The New Testament was written primarily in Greek. So let's move to question number 3. Question number 3 is kind of the follow-up question then. If the New Testament was written in Greek, what language was the Old Testament primarily written in? So go ahead and make your comments, and I'll see if I can see this now without having to refresh and see if comments come through. What language was the Old Testament primarily written in? All right, a number have said Greek also. Corey Schmidt has joined us. Michelle Woods has joined us. They've given answers. Corey's provided an answer. The correct answer, and I've just lost where I'm at. Why did this do this? Oh. The correct answer is the Old Testament was written in Hebrew. All right. The Old Testament was written in Hebrew. Now, there is some controversy in this answer, but I'll provide you with a little more detail as we go. Question number 4 then is, what sections of the Old Testament was written in Aramaic? So I told you there was a little controversy in the last answer. I said, yes, the Old Testament was written in Hebrew, but there are certain sections that were written in Aramaic. All right. In fact, up until the Dead Sea Scrolls, almost all of the ancient manuscripts that we had of the Old Testament were in Aramaic. That's kind of unusual, isn't it? And then with the Dead Sea Scrolls, suddenly we had a wealth of Old Testament manuscripts in ancient Hebrew. So the question was, what sections of the Old Testament are written in Aramaic? I see a number of answers, and the answer is a little surprising. It's certain sections of Daniel and Esther. Daniel and Esther. Now, I'll give you the reason for that here as we go, but kind of just hang on with me for a few moments because I don't want to give away some answers to other questions. Now, we're going to jump back to the New Testament. The New Testament, we said, was written in Greek, but what kind of Greek was the New Testament written in? Do you have any idea? What kind or what type of Greek was the Old Testament written in? Once again, what type of Greek was the Old Testament written in? I see that my sister Audrey is watching. Okay, Audrey. Audrey's not feeling well. Please make sure that you remember her in prayer. Michelle Woods has said, interesting. Okay, that's a good response. I'm hoping that as I share with you today, you'll kind of understand some things a little differently about the Bible. Charlene says the type of Greek used was informal. Jeff uses the term koine. Well, we all know Jeff is our Bible scholar, and Jeff is correct. The type of Greek that was used was koine. Now, the word koine itself means common. So it's common Greek. So in a way, Charlene's right. It is an informal Greek. It wasn't classical Greek. So much of Greek writing, the classics we know of, were written in classical Greek, which is a very formal language. The Bible was written in the street language, almost the slang language of the day. Now, I think this is important for us because a lot of people love to argue about which translation is the best. You know, some people like the King James because it seems to be more majestic. Some people don't like other translations because they're too simple. Some feel like some are too formal. Some feel like some of them are too simplistic. The writers of the New Testament wrote in the common street language of the day. And so I think we need to take a good look at ourselves before we get too caught up with criticizing certain translations as being too simple or not as formal as, say, the King James is. And we're going to talk a little bit during this series about different translations and what makes a good translation. I think that's all tied in to this idea of understanding a bit of Hebrew. All right, let me move on to question number 6. And question 6 is pretty straightforward, and maybe a question you've never thought of before. What language did Jesus speak most frequently? That would indicate that he spoke probably more than one language. I bet you've never given any thought as to what language Jesus spoke. But I think it's a very important question to ask. And what we're asking here is not only what language did Jesus speak, but what language did the people of Jesus' world speak? What did his neighbors speak? What was going on in the world? And what language was the most popular? And so I think it's important for us to come to grips with this because it's going to provide us some very startling discoveries as we move forward. So I see a number of people have provided answers. And again, it's hard for me to tell which answer is for which question now. I do notice a number of people. Chris Leatherberry is with us. I appreciate that. Andrew's latest guess was Aramaic, and that is correct. Jesus spoke Aramaic. All right. Now, Arabic, and I noticed Jackie had shared that. Arabic is a form of Aramaic, probably the best way for me to say it. Now, people who are experts in language probably will disagree with my simplicity there, but it is a form of Aramaic. Now, the question that comes up is if Jesus spoke Aramaic, why is the New Testament written in Greek? Was the New Testament written originally in Aramaic and then translated into Greek? Well, that's a question for another day, perhaps. And we'll address that as we go through. But let's get done with our quiz here. Question number 7. And this is going to confuse you even further. Question number 7 is, what is the Septuagint? Now, some of you are going to say the Sephu? What difference does this make? Well, it is important because we're talking about the languages of the Bible, and obviously this has something to do with the languages of the Bible. I'm looking here for additional comments. I think I'm going to have to refresh. Give me just a second here. The comments are building up, 38 comments right now. Some have said that don't know. What is it? Some have said it's a very early translation. That's interesting, Charlene. Corey says it's the earliest Greek translation. The Septuagint, let's put me back on the screen here. The Septuagint is a Greek version of the Old Testament. I want you to think about that for a moment. It's a Greek translation of the Old Testament. The word Septuagint means 70, and 70 scholars worked to translate the Bible from Hebrew into Greek. Now, why in the world would the Old Testament need to be translated from Hebrew into Greek? And again, this is a bit of a mystery because the Jewish people throughout the centuries had spoken Hebrew. So why is there a need, a couple of hundred years before Jesus is born, for the Old Testament to be translated into Greek? And it's interesting, but when the Old Testament is quoted in the New Testament, most of the time it's from the Septuagint. Now, there's something you might not have known. So why is the Bible translated from Hebrew to Greek? We'll address this in just a moment, but let's move forward. Question number 8, we're coming to the end. I want to know, what language is most like biblical Hebrew? One of the languages that we've talked about thus far is very similar to biblical Hebrew. And I just wonder if you might have figured out what that might be. Corey's given an interesting spot, said that the Septuagint was made for the Jews that were living in Greece, and that's a good guess. It's interesting is the Jews weren't living in Greece, the Greeks were living everywhere. You know, we're in the middle of the Greek Empire, and then of course when the Greek Empire fell, the Roman Empire took over, and the Roman Empire continued to maintain Greek as one of the official languages of the empire. And so everybody spoke Greek, even the Jews. And so again, it became necessary for the Old Testament to be translated into Greek. So what language is most like biblical Hebrew? I see a number of guesses. The answer is Aramaic. All right. Now, modern Aramaic is nothing like modern Hebrew, but back then there was a similarity between the two languages. A person who spoke biblical Hebrew would be able to understand someone speaking ancient Aramaic. All right. The same is not true today. At least this is what I am told. So let's move on to question number 9. I know, a little bit of a trick question there. Here's the question. What historical event led to the use of Aramaic in the Bible? What historical event led to the use of Aramaic in the Bible? Think about this. We talked about already that it was the book of Daniel that we find some Aramaic, and the book of, I believe I said Esther, and the answer was Ezra. Ezra was the other book. All right. So Daniel and Ezra what was going on in the world during that period of time. All right, and this will help us to understand the reason why we find some sections of Aramaic in the Old Testament. Now, Daniel is writing during the period of time when the nation of Israel, the southern kingdom, had been taken into captivity. The northern kingdom had already fallen, and they had fallen to the Assyrians. Now, we spent a lot of time on this when we were going through the Bible, but I want to remind you that after Solomon, Israel was divided into two sections, the northern section and the southern section. The northern section went by the name Israel, and all of the kings of the northern kingdom were evil, right? They fell to the Assyrian Empire, and the Assyrian Empire, by and large, spoke Aramaic, all right? The southern kingdom of Israel was referred to not by Israel, but I'm having one of those senior moments. What was it called, Jeff? Remind me. I don't know why my mind just went totally blank. At any rate, the southern kingdom would fall in I remember the year it falls to the Babylonians, 722 BC, and they fall to the Babylonian Empire, and the Babylonian Empire speaks Aramaic. So during the period of time when Daniel is writing, anytime he is writing about like King Nebuchadnezzar, he writes in Aramaic, all right? And when we come to Ezra, there are certain sections of Ezra that are being written in Aramaic because it had become the primary language of the world during this time, because they had captured the Jewish nation, all right? Both the Assyrians and the Babylonians. Now, it's important for us to see this because it explains where the Aramaic comes from in our Old Testament Bible. And it also is going to explain why, if Jesus was a Jew who you would have thought spoke Hebrew, why he spoke Aramaic. They maintained the language of their ancestors. Now, the Jews in Jesus's day, at least the learned ones, probably did speak Hebrew, at least in a religious sense, all right? But Hebrew is becoming less and less popular even among the Jewish people, and it will eventually disappear from existence. It will be a dead language. It will be resurrected in our day, and of course, biblical Hebrew has been known through the centuries. But in Jesus's day, very few would have spoken Hebrew, at least to any large extent, mainly the religious scholars, the scribes, the Pharisees. Most people would have spoke Aramaic because that's what everybody else spoke. Those who were better educated would have also spoken Greek. Now, when I use the term educated, I don't mean a formal sense. For example, we know that many of the disciples were fishermen. Well, they would have had to known Greek in order to be able to conduct their daily business, because they would have been conducting business with people who weren't just Jews living in what we call the Holy Lands. They would have been dealing with people throughout the area, and many of them would have been Greek. And so Greek is the language of industry. It is the language of business. It's the language of the common people that are there. And so we see that there would probably have been a necessity for Jesus and others to know Greek. Now, if the New Testament is being written during this time, why is it being written in Greek rather than Aramaic? Well, because Aramaic is a dialect or a language that is for only a few, for a small group of people, primarily the Jewish people. The early Christian church recognized that the message of Jesus Christ was for the whole world. And so they would write in the language for the whole world. And that would have been Greek at the time. All right, so let's go to our last question, question number 10. And question 10 is Aramaic ever used in the New Testament? We've kind of provided an answer to this. Is Aramaic ever used in the New Testament? What do you think? Let's see if I can get a response here. I see Loretta Wynn is watching with us. Hello. And again, I will have to refresh. You are blowing up my phone here. We are at over 50 comments. I like this. I believe Charlene said that yes, it was used in the New Testament. And the answer is it is used. And it's used primarily for the words of Jesus. For example, when Jesus talks about calling his father Abba, Father, that is in Aramaic. So we see some specific words that Jesus speaks that are written in Aramaic. And I believe the biblical writers did this to demonstrate authenticity in what they are writing. So that's been our question here today, to look at the Bible and understand that it's not quite as simple as what we had all pictured. So to summarize real quickly, the Bible's primarily Old Testament written in Hebrew, New Testament primarily written in Greek, and a little bit of Aramaic in the Old Testament, a little bit of Aramaic in the New Testament. Now, because the Old Testament is written in Hebrew, it behooves us to at least understand a little bit about Hebrew words. Now, I have used as the title of our series here, and I'm looking for the correct pronunciation, Limmud, which is a Hebrew word that means to learn. So we're talking about learning key Hebrew words. And so I wanted to use this term Limmud. And it comes from a Hebrew word, lamed, I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly, which is also just a letter in the Hebrew alphabet. And the letter gets its name from the idea of a cattle prod or an ox prod. And because it's kind of in the shape of this prod that would have been used to poke the ox as he pulled your cart or your plow to keep him going the direction that you wanted to go. And as a result, this ox goad, or the Hebrew letter lamed, suddenly becomes a word or a term that is used when we're talking about training something. The purpose of the pole is to teach the ox to do the right thing. Instead of the ox going this way or that way, you can control where he goes in order to get where you're going, right? And so this ox prod, this lamed, becomes a term that is used in terms of teaching. And so we go from lamed to limmud in order to teach. And there are many Hebrew words, and again, I'm not a Hebrew scholar. I want to make this very clear. I don't speak Hebrew. What I'm giving you is information that I have gathered through research, but I think it helps us to understand that when we see a word similar, all right, to this limmud, we understand that it's going to refer to teach or to learn. And in fact, many Hebrew words will have various shades of meaning. And this is one of the challenges of understanding the Old Testament. Because so many Hebrew words can have multiple meanings, it becomes very important for us to understand what some of those multiple meanings are and how they may color the text or our understanding of the text. Have you ever wondered why, when you read one translation, it seems to say one thing, and then you read another translation, and it says something that looks to be completely different? And you wonder what in the world's going on here. Well, it's because they're looking at the same words, but because those words have a variety of meanings, it produces a variety of interpretations. All right. Now, I don't think this really affects any doctrine in any way, but it does cause us to take a little deeper look at some of the Hebrew words and to understand them a little bit clearer. Now, during our time over the next 10 weeks, we're going to look at a total of 10 different words. Here they are. Week 1, we're going to look at the word Shema or Shema. Week 2, shove. And no, that doesn't mean to shove your brother or sister down the steps. We'll talk about that. Rach is the next. And again, I'm not positive I'm pronouncing these correctly. I'm doing the best I can. If you have a different interpretation, perfectly fine with me. Shalom. Shalom. Most of you probably have heard that and have a pretty good idea what it means. Yeshua should be a familiar one. And Israel, or Israel, the Hebrew term. And then there is Avad, there is Tal, there is Yira, and Netzer. Now, I'm taking most of these from a little book on Hebrew words and devotions, but I'm adding a great deal of additional study to these, and I'm about halfway through in my preparation. But I think you'll find each of these words really help to tell a story that help to enrich the idea of the Old Testament. I hope you'll join me for the next few Tuesdays as we jump into this. We'll be at 4 o'clock. If you can't join me live, you can, of course, participate after the fact, and I invite you to do so. In fact, that's where the vast majority of people watch us. I want to thank you again for your prayers for me during my knee replacement ordeal. I have scheduled the other knee for the beginning of December. I have told my wife I will put it down in writing, but I won't guarantee I'll go through it. It just really depends on how the right leg is doing, as to whether or not I want to move ahead. I don't want to be totally incapacitated. And yet the right leg is coming along very well, and I'm very pleased. There are a number of other people that are going through similar surgeries. I know Harold Hilton is going through this same surgery at the same time, and I wish Harold a lot of luck, and I know there are others. But again, thank you for taking time to send me wishes and concerns and being patient with me, simply because on the medication that I'm on and so forth, sometimes the mind doesn't think as clearly. I'm trying to wean myself off that medication right now so I can drive again. I'm tired of being chauffeured around by my wife, and I'm sure she's tired of chauffeuring me around. But please continue to pray for both of us. I appreciate you. I want you to know that I love each and every one of you very much. I do want to encourage you to take a minute to go to the YouTube page, www.youtube.com @Jim Schaefer 8933 / I don't know which is which, playlists. And that will take you to all of the videos that I have. And of course, this video will be the very first in a brand new series that I will upload just in a little bit. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and thanks again for being here. I realize this Bible study is a little longer than I would traditionally do, and I appreciate your patience with that. God bless. Have a wonderful day. I'll see you next Tuesday.